Before we start the guidelines, to access the recorded sessions and get your certificate of completion or certificate of attendance, you need to register in ADU community portal. Participants who submit the final reflection will receive a certificate of completion. Participants who choose not to submit the final reflection will receive a certificate of attendance. For those choosing to submit the reflection, the deadline will be on November 4, 2021 by 11:59 p.m. Abu Dhabi, UAE timing. To have access to translation during the sessions, please download the Microsoft Translate. The IT department will provide you with the code, and the link has been sent in the chat already. During the sessions, you can write your comments in the chat box. You can use the Q&A option in both AHA Slides or Zoom to ask any questions related to the topic, and the presenter will answer questions accordingly. You can also use the raise hand button on Zoom in case you want to speak. You will receive a feedback survey today in the chat box. Kindly fill this survey to help us improve our certification programs. Dr. Reem Hashem, a Master of Education and Educational Leadership Program Coordinator, an assistant professor with a demonstrated history of working in the education industry, skilled in research, adult education, English as a second language, curriculum development, and public speaking. A strong education professional with a dual master's in education and educational management and policy, and a doctor of philosophy focused in educational leadership. Dr. Reem's research interest is primarily in the areas of critical theories and transformative learning, teacher professional learning and development, and cross-cultural educational leadership, with particular attention to educational issues and challenges in the Middle East. Dr. Reem, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Layal. Thank you. So let me share my screen. Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Doctor.
All right. So welcome, everyone. And today is our fourth presentation entitled Engaging Students in Distance Learning. And this is the fourth of the series of use of technology in hybrid education. And I will be presenting this one. And my name is Dr. Reem Hashem. So I hope that you will find this presentation itself as an example of engagement experience. So first of all, since we are presenting using AHA Slide platform, I would like you please to scan the code in order to join me on this platform. And a reminder for those who cannot scan it, you can always log into ahaslides.com and you there. Great, I see that people started to join. And by now, I'm sure that all of you are familiar with this platform because it has been used throughout the presentations in this series here. Okay. I'll give it 1 minute for all of you to join. And I would appreciate it, please, Ibrahim, if you could put the code for the attendees on the chat box, in the chat box, so that they can use it later on if they miss the chance to scan the code down. Great. Okay, I'll hide the code now. If you need me to share it one more time, just let me know. And just a quick reminder of what Layal mentioned. If you have any question during the presentation, you can use the Zoom chat question Zoom chat, and the questions will be answered at the end of the sections or at the end of the presentation as we see how it goes on. And for the verbal communication, you can raise your hand and you can be unmuted and ask your question. There will be many interactive slides, so I would really appreciate it if you could really join us by answering these questions and reflecting on some of the critical ideas that will be discussed throughout the presentation. That's why make sure that your mobiles are next to you, and this session, of course, is being recorded. So let's move on with our presentation for today. So my first question, how are you feeling today? And I just hope that all of you are in the excited and enthusiastic mode, the first mode, or you're in a good mood and good mood, sorry, and you're ready to learn something about this interesting topic. Oh, some of you are a bit bored and tired. I understand. It's late in the day, and some of you are hungry. Okay. All right. Some of you are sleepy. So I hope not. We're hoping to wake up those who are sleepy. So, okay. Yes. So I can see from the number that not all of you have joined yet, but I'm hoping for more to join because that's critical for the participation. Come on, I just want to know about your mood for today. I certainly hope that you all start to feel more excited and enthusiastic to join us in the discussion. All right. No, not sleepy. We are going to wake you up. Okay, great. So I'd like to start with the self-reflection here. And how would you rate your readiness to teach and distance learning format? So I am ready. I'm still facing many challenges I can't solve. I'm not ready at all and I need support. So how would you rate your readiness for the distance learning now after like 3 or 4 semesters in COVID? So many of you are ready. That's great. Yes, that's encouraging. Yes. And facing some challenges. Yes, I would say yeah, that's realistic. We're still facing issues. Okay. But we're still, being very optimistic because we feel that many of you here are ready for that. So let's see the second self-reflection question. What's your comfort level with technology that you use to teach? I'm tech savvy. I integrate technology efficiently. I know how to use some applications. I don't use technology other than the teaching platform that I have. So which one of these really represent you? Okay. That's really quite interesting. And let's be honest about the self-reflection because that's the starting point for practices to change and to be more informed when we decide to change them. So many of you said that you integrate technology efficiently. I would like you to take the chance today to further judge the use of technology that you have in your classroom. And to what extent do you think that the technology you are using is engaging for your students? For those who are using some applications, I hope that they will end up more confident today about trying to approach technology with, with less fear and more interest to investigate the potential that it has, that it provides, and the possibilities that it can bring for enhancing the engagement. Not using technology at all, and I hope today you will learn something that will help you change your opinion about it and make decisions about integrating technology. Now, the last one, is there an instructional designer or peer teacher available to help you with technology in your schools or the place where you work? Yes, no, or sometimes. That's quite interesting. So we're getting many answers as no. I mean, you're not getting support there, at school with technology, which is again, confirms with the new approach towards integration of technology or teaching in general, which is the DIY approach, do it yourself. So we realized, I mean, here that probably approaching or using technology and bridging this gap of knowledge that we have, some of us have, is our responsibility, and is something that we need to do with ourselves. So that's good. I mean, let's proceed now. Today, we're going to look at two things that relate to the topic of engagement. And today we're going to consider the meaning of engagement, learner engagement, whether it's in traditional or in hybrid education. And we're going to look at the funnel design. This is what I like to call it, the funnel design. How we decide to, or on what basis do we decide to use a certain technology app in our classes to enhance the engagement. I think that should go through a funnel that we'll be discussing and looking at later on. We will be focusing on learning theories for technology integration to enhance engagement in distance learning. We're going to look at rethinking the instructional design for enhancing learning with technology. And finally, we're going to look at integrating engaging collaboration platforms. Okay, so remember that all of, the theme of engagement today will be focused on the use of technology. All right, so since we're going to start with engagement, the issue of engagement, so what does the word engagement mean to you? Can you please give us some ideas? If I say engagement, what would come to your mind? Active participation, great. Attentive, collaboration, participate, active learners, students' contribution, involving students, role play, keep focused. Okay, so I still find active participation in the middle, which is great. Constant learning, challenging activities, answering questions, attentiveness. Again, the word attention, paying attention is really at the heart of it. Great interaction. Isn't that beautiful? Okay. Student-centered involvement. Curiosity, I like this word. Interested, sharing. So you're really summarizing the main points of the constituents of engaging environments, learner engaging environments in the words that you're putting here. And you will see that later on with what we're focusing on, we are using the words that you have here. So thank you for sharing these interesting ideas. Okay, so if we look at the definition of engagement, it just says, one of the definitions, of course, is the amount of effort dedicated to educational activities that bring out ideal performance. So one definition focuses on how much effort you dedicate, and dedicate is you put willingly with enthusiasm in order to achieve a task. Another one says the extent to which learners' thoughts, feelings, and activities are actively involved in learning. And I think this substantiates what you mentioned in the previous slide about active participation. Okay. And the third one here is the degree of attention, curiosity, interest, optimism, and passion. So there's a lot of feelings that are put there in the word engagement, not only attitude. And that's something I would like you to focus on when you think of the concept of learner engagement. The students show when they are learning or being taught, which extends to the level of motivation that they have to learn and progress in their education. So if we focus on students' optimism, curiosity, interest, and passion, we are enhancing their level of motivation, which is essential for teaching and learning. Okay, now I have a question for you. If a student is engaged in texting on a cell phone, and is it fully the student's problem, or might I, as an educator, be missing opportunities to keep my students engaged? Do you think it's fully the student's responsibility, fully my responsibility, or an equal shared responsibility between the learner and the educator? Oh, That's quite interesting. I have some people who would say it's fully the student's responsibility, is it? Okay, so we have 86 who say that it's an equal responsibility between the educator and the learner. So that's a question that we need to keep in mind. When our students are not engaged, we keep blaming them for having this attitude, but at the same time, we forget that it's mostly, I wouldn't really say it's equally a shared responsibility. I think there is a bigger part that falls on our shoulder to keep our students engaged. So that's something for us to think about. Are we really designing the right kind of activities that will keep them engaged? So the question that follows is that, how can I tell whether my students are engaged or not? Of course, all of us as educators would like to have our students engaged. I know that they are engaged. Now, here I would like to use Dr. or Professor Schlichty's, model, which he designed in 2002. Dr. Philip Schlichty suggested that engagement can be measured on the basis of two indicators in your classroom. He said the indicators are attention and commitment. So if the students are paying attention in your classroom, and if they are committed to the learning that you have in your classroom, then they are fully engaged. But based on these two elements or two factors, he identified 5 categories of engagement in the classroom. Of course, later on, Dr. Philip added two other dimensions, which is persistence, which is the persistence of the learner or their decision to continue to learn, and having meaning and value while they are being taught. But for now, we're going to focus only on two dimensions, which is the dimension of attention and commitment. Now, in the coming slide here, you're going to watch a video about these 5 levels of engagement. And I'd like you to take notes, because the question that follows will really depend on your understanding of these 5 levels that were identified by Professor Schlichty. So let's start.
Schlichty's levels of engagement in less than 5 minutes, I promise. If you watch this scene from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you'll notice that even in the midst of a boring lesson, none of the students are actually misbehaving. They're quiet. Nobody's tossing spitballs or playing those paper football games or checking their cell phones because, well, the cell phones back then were the size of a brick. Remember the Zach Morris phone. But most of the students are essentially following the rules. They aren't engaged. But what are they? Well, some seem to be retreating. A few seem to be playing the game of school, but nobody is actually committed to the learning. Well, here's where Schlichty's levels of engagement becomes helpful. It provides a useful framework for thinking about what it means for students to be genuinely engaged in their learning. Schlichty defines it this way. Engagement is active. It requires the students to be attentive as well as in attendance. It requires students to be committed to the task and find some inherent value in what he or she is being asked to do. The engaged student not only does the task assigned, but also does the task with enthusiasm and diligence. In 2002, Philip Schlichty developed a framework for thinking about student engagement based on 2 core ideas of attention and commitment. At the bottom, you have rebellion, which involves diverted attention and no commitment to the task. This is the student who seems to be acting out and causing disruptions, and as a result, they fail to learn from the task. Next, you have retreatism with no attention and no commitment. Unlike the rebellion, this student in retreat is not actively disrupting the learning, but instead seems to be kind of checked out. This student is often distracted and emotionally withdrawn from the task, and as a result, this student learns little or nothing from the task. At the next level, you have ritual compliance. This involves both low attention and low commitment. Unlike Retreatism, a ritually compliant student doesn't completely check out, but instead is doing the bare minimum to avoid confrontation. This student will learn at a low level, and the task will not be retained over time. Next is strategic compliance. Often this looks like engagement because the student might be performing at a high level, but it's not. Here, the student has high attention on the task, but low commitment to what he or she is doing. This is the student who is playing the game of school, focused on things like grades, parental approval, rewards, and class rank. But the learning isn't intrinsically rewarding, and as a result, this student will often learn at a high level, but fails to retain the learning over time or transfer it to a new context. And then finally, you have engagement. This requires both high attention and high commitment. Here, a student completely buys in out of a strong sense of intrinsic motivation, and this includes meaning and choice and challenge. This student will continue focusing even when the task gets more complex and challenging, and often they're going to choose to learn even when it is ungraded. This student will learn at a deep level, and the transfer will continue to new contexts. And this is why it's important that we as teachers focus on how to make the subject intrinsically engaging. And this happens when we tap into student curiosity and creativity and purpose. And when this happens, students are more likely to grow into passionate, lifelong learners.
Okay.
Dr. Reem,
Yes.
excuse me just 1 second. Is Ibrahim is available because they are asking about the translation code and link. Ibrahim with us, Ibrahim IT.
He's supposed to be here because he greeted us at the beginning of the session.
Yeah, and he was here earlier. He has sent the link in the chat, Dr. Fteha. It's already in the chat.
But he should post it several times, Layal, because they will miss it if they have to go back to the previous chat, so it will be difficult for them. So we'll wait for him. So sorry, colleagues, for this inconvenience.
So do you want me to stop a little bit, Dr. Fteha?
Go ahead. It's fine. Go ahead. I will.
All right. Okay, no worries. All right. Yes. So as you can see from the video here, we have, or Dr. Shlechi identified 5 levels of engagement. The first 2 levels at the bottom, the rebellion and the retreatism, have usually or show no attention and no commitment in the classroom. But the difference is that one of them is a troublemaker, the other one is silent in your class. And then you have the compliant level, the strategic and the ritual. And in the ritual, he's doing or she's doing the bare minimum of the effort that they should be doing, just to avoid being punished. Whereas the strategic is doing the highest they could do simply because they are extrinsically motivated by grades. So it's not the intrinsic motivation. And the issue with that is that the problem would happen when they finish their education, because they will not be able to retrieve the information, for the issue with the information retention or knowledge retention, and they use it in life. Whereas the fully engaged student is the one who will keep the curiosity and passion for learning going on with them. So now, if you look at your own classroom, again, another reflection on your own practice as an educator. What kind of classroom do you have? And let's be honest about it. Let's say most of the time, do you have the engaged classroom, the compliant classroom, whether it's the ritual or the strategic? Or do you have the off-task classroom, the retreatist and the rebellious? Let's remember that in the engaged classroom, students are fully attentive and fully committed because they are intrinsically motivated. In the middle, you have students who are either they're extrinsically motivated in both cases. In one case, they don't want to be punished. In the other case, they want to get high grades. And this is sorry, and that's why they're doing the task. In the last level, no attention and no commitment. So I find that the majority here from the voting fall in the middle, as you can see. If we have a class that we consider off task, we need to ask ourselves, to really think carefully about what is happening in our classroom. And again, as educators, we are held responsible for what is happening in our classroom. Sometimes we might need help, but we have to seek that help. And we should not really accept that we have this level of engagement in our classroom. We should question our practices and ask for other people's support if we are stuck or don't know what to do. For those who are in the middle, we're hoping that by the end of today's class, you have, I have given you some keys on what doors to open next in the future in order to help you transform your practices. So now, of course, for many of us as educators, we had the traditional experience of learning. And we oftentimes hear from teachers this claim that we learned in old schools, in traditional schools, and we really did well. So the problem is with the way we're teaching. The issue is with the way the new generation is acting. But if we really consider our own experience when we were at schools, and we are being honest about what happened to us when we are there, most of us were largely involved sitting in our classroom, listening to the teacher, taking notes, studying, and then getting ready to get good grades. But we need to ask ourselves, what did we retain of the information or the knowledge that we studied? How much did we keep with us? And the other question is, how did we retain what we truly learned? So part of what we learned necessarily remains with us. But if we think carefully about this part and we try to remember how we learned this part in particular, I'm pretty confident that we will all find that we were exposed to active learning experiences back then from some teachers that helped us retain what we have studied. So we do not want really to keep counting on that claim on the good old days, all right? Now, whether we're talking about engagement in traditional learning or we're talking about engagement in hybrid or distance learning, we have to admit that effectiveness and increased retention of learning happens only when active teaching takes place. And the meaning of active teaching is when the students are doing the following. First of all, your students benefit from talking and engaging to one another. So there is a high sense of collaboration. Okay, so they're engaging with one another, they are engaging with the content. So there is also cognitive involvement and engagement of the learner. And you are giving them time to process your questions in order to answer them. Again, your students also benefit from explaining their information and sharing their thoughts. So if they're doing that, they are being engaged. Students learn by discussing concepts, okay, to each other, by collaborating on making sense of what you are teaching them. So active learning actually rests on on having collaboration, okay? As we will see later on from the designs, the instructional designs, okay? So with active learning, you can guarantee having an engaged students. But the question that remains here, since we are talking in our series here about the use of technology in hybrid education, we want to focus on this question. How do we use technology in class to enhance learners' engagement in distance learning? So the focus here is on technology use. Before we approach this question or try to answer this question, I want to really give you to pose some caution here. Never put the cart before the horse, otherwise it will not move. And this is unfortunately what happens in many of the practices that we have in our classrooms. We rush into making decisions about what kind of technology we want to integrate and what kind of experience we want our students to have in order to prove to ourselves and others, most of the time administration, that we are having technology in our classroom, but without much thinking about why we are genuinely engaging or using this technology in our classes. So I want you to remember that before thinking of the word technology, when you are teaching in the classroom, technology is actually called in classroom educational technology or instructional technology, academic technology, or even EdTech. So no matter what name you give to technology, you will notice that education comes before technology, which means that whatever technology we find out there and we're tempted to use, we need to remember that the choice has to be informed by the needs of our classroom and by the needs of our students and by learning our learning outcomes, by the needs of our design, and by the learning theories that we have about best practices in education. Education comes before technology, and we all need to remember that. And that will take us to the funnel design that I talked about at the beginning of this class, or sorry, of this session. The funnel consists of 3 parts. There is the big umbrella, the overarching umbrella, which is the learning theories that all of us as educators are responsible to be aware of. Okay, so what learning theories for technology integration in particular, because we're talking about technology here, to enhance engagement in distance learning, do we all know? So look at this funnel. I want you please to put all the applications that you have in mind in this funnel, and then see if these applications using the learning theories that you know about best practices. After that, the second level will be seeing it in the instructional design that we know, the best instructional designs. And then out here, you will have the result will be effective applications that will really help you in enhancing engagement in your classroom. So do not really run into or jump into the use of application before they go into this funnel. Let's start by focusing on the learning theories for technology integration. Now, usually when I start my class, I like to start with, the very first session that I teach, I like to start with this image. And my students are always curious and they want to know why I have this image, a pizza delivery person. So what do you think? What message am I giving my students with this picture? I will hide the image here and happy on job. Okay, rewards, fast information, response, and okay, rewards a response, and then respect. I like that. Okay, we respect the pizza person. All right, fun, learning time, knock the door first. Okay, I like that. Fast delivery. Respect all jobs. I like that. Punctuality, be ready. Delivering a service. Open your minds. I like that. That's really creative. Open your minds. Yes. And then satisfaction. Okay, we're sorry for those who chose to. The picture of hungry. Being hungry at the beginning of this, presentation. Okay, that was not meant to torture them. Thank you, happy. All right, so showing the picture again, excellent answers. But my answer might be unexpected a little bit. Usually I show them this picture to tell them I am not the pizza person. As their teacher, I'm not here to deliver pizza. So I'm not there to give them information. So we have all to forget about this transmission mode of giving knowledge to our students and think of another or other structures that would facilitate true meaning of learning. So it will not be a pizza delivery session, not today and not even in my classes as decision that I always make. And I make my students equally responsible to understand what they're expected to do in my classes, since they are not receiving pizza. So it's not ready-made. It's not ready delivered to them. All right, so the first concept that I like to instill in my classes is the concept of presence, that all of them have to be present. And when I introduce this concept, in order to create the educational experience that we're hoping for, that educational experience that we all call engaging, I tell them that part of what I do, what I do is only part of the educational experience, which is the teaching presence. All right, and that's my job here. I select the content for my students, and I set the climate for learning. However, there is also a social presence, which is a mutual responsibility between me and the learners, and between the learners themselves. So the learners have to make sure that they are socially engaging with other learners, and they're socially engaging with me as their instructor. And that's very important. Now I want you to think of the technology that you're using. Is it facilitating that kind of presence in your class? So we always, unfortunately, think of teaching presence, and what technology do I need to present my the information to my students. But we oftentimes forget about what technology we might need in order to facilitate the social presence. And then there is also the cognitive presence. Again, for the instructor, the responsibility is to select the content that is really intellectually and cognitively engaging. But for the learner, they have to be engaged in experiences that would require them to have the cognitive presence, which means it would require them to engage with the material that you are presenting intellectually and to produce intellectual designs as well. So after we think about that, see how the shape is broadening now, because you got out of when you put it in the funnel and you put it in the learning theory and having the model of communities of inquiry. Of course, sorry, I forgot to mention that this is a model of community of inquiry that was suggested by Anderson, Archer, and Garrison in the year 2000. So after you put it in this model, you start to think about the activities, the designs, and after that, what kind or what technology applications are out there that would facilitate these experiences. So you see how we're moving from the core, and then we're making decisions, and this is how we guarantee that our decisions are informed. Okay, so that's the first theory that I would like you to focus on. Now, moving on from the concept of community of inquiry, I would like to ask about the following models of technology integration. Which of these are you familiar with or you use in your classroom? The PICRAC, the SAMR, or the digital, the Bloom's digital taxonomy? Okay, I'm so happy that some of you also know about the SAMR model. Oh, the PICRAC as well, great. But most of you here are talking about Bloom's digital taxonomy, and would like to find connections between these models and Bloom's digital taxonomy, because I know that Bloom, is at the core of all our educational experiences. So we have 5 who are familiar with SAMR. That's great. I need more answers, please. So let's know who's familiar with these models. Okay, so we can tell that the majority here are choosing are to the side of Bloom's digital taxonomy. That's great. So out there, there's so many learning theories about the integration of technology. And in the second day, when Dr. Costa talked about this topic, he actually addressed many of these theories. I really recommend that you go back there to the presentation and check them out. He talked about the SAMR, he talked about the PICRAT, he talked about TPAC, and the learning wheel, the pedagogy wheel, where you have the integration of Bloom's digital taxonomy along with all these theories that you have here. But today what I'm going to do is mainly to focus on one of these theories. And while you're learning more about these theories, and that would be your task from now on, since now you know that there are these theories that should be informing our learning. While you're doing that, you will start to build connections between these different theories, because at the core, they have this element of agreement on what should define our best practices in the classroom. So today we'll be focusing on two designs, the SAMR and the Bloom's digital taxonomy. So before we move into the model that I want to discuss with you, looking at this slide here, there is the traditional teacher with the whiteboard, and even in other classes with the chalkboard, explaining and writing on the board. And there is another teacher with a smart board in the classroom with the material on a PowerPoint presented on the board, and she's pointing to them. So, to what extent do you think, I want you to ask yourself this question, to what extent do you think the practices are different in both slides? Personally, I would say that both slides are a digital, or the second slide is a digital replica to the traditional practice. So are we claiming that we have integrated technology in a way that would transform education in the second or in the slide to the right? Okay, I wouldn't say that. I would say yes, the element of technology replaced the traditional whiteboard that we had there. And that's a big question that we need to keep in mind, how we are using technology in our classroom. At the first level, we have the substitution. As we saw, now we're having a SAMR model, and SAMR is the acronym for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. So the first level that you saw in the previous slide was a substitution. You replaced the whiteboard with the smart board, but with no actually any additional element to really enable learning. The use of technology can also be an augmentation. So you can have an added element which you do not have usually in the substitution when you, you're using technology directly to replace the traditional learning. And both of these fall in the enhancement category. If you want to think of transforming the experiences that you are offering to your students, and this is something that also was mentioned in Dr. Skos's presentation when he talked about what we need is building new experiences of education, transformational experiences. If we are talking about transformation, you should consider the modification and the redefinition of experiences that you have. The modification is that when technology allows for significant task redesign, and the redefinition is when you have new, let's say, products that were not possible with the traditional technology at all. And we will have now an example. Let's have a lesson from geography. For example, you give this assignment to your student, an overview of education consisting of handwritten content supplemented with a compiled, cut and pasted magazine clippings. And of course, this is traditional one, and it really entails using paper and glue and pictures, etc., etc. Now you want to digitize this assignment. So if you're only substituting the assignment, you will ask your students to use presentations like PowerPoint and Prezi, and to construct the information on the presentation and present it to class. That would only be a substitution of what you gave them in the beginning. If you want to augment that, but you're still in the enhancement level, you ask your students to integrate some videos in their presentations and some pictures to add to their presentations, and that would be augmentation. Of course, when you are doing a traditional design with paper and pencil, you cannot use videos. But again, you still haven't modified the learning and haven't pushed it up to more higher order thinking skill. When you want to modify it, you would ask them, for example, to create a digital travel brochure and incorporate multimedia, okay, and create a video, for example, about it. Finally, when you're redefining, you will ask them to explore the local with the location with the Google Earth, to have some interviews to ask about issues that relate to this place. This is a redefinition, and this is a creative, actually, submission or product of what you've asked for traditionally. So there is a redesign, a complete restructuring and redesign. Another example from the literature, if you want them to understand Shakespeare, if they are really substituting it, they read, instead of reading Shakespeare on, in a book, they read Shakespeare online. So, but nothing happened. The reading is the same. Augmentation, they use online dictionaries and they use some websites to supplement their readings. The modification, they use multimedia resources like videos to learn more about the people in the, for example, in Shakespeare work. That's it. So, they are really enhancing their knowledge using some resources beyond the written and resources that they can read. So they can check, let's say, videos, YouTube videos, they can check pictures, they can check captions, they can check blogs, etc. And the redefinition is when you relate their learning to a big question that will ask them actually, for example, to do a mind map using certain applications about analysis of Shakespeare work. So there are plenty of examples that you can find out there in the, in some websites about a SAMR model and the PICRAT model that I introduced in the previous slides about how you can actually elevate the level of the assignments that you give in the classroom in order to move them from the level of substitution to the level of redefinition. That was for the SAMR model. Now, taking you to the very familiar model that you have here. For example, the model of Bloom's taxonomy. And I know that we mentioned Bloom's digital taxonomy, but that would be the first step for you to consider. So when you want to prepare something using the digital taxonomy, the first thing that you should think about is to define the content and the task that you want your students to prepare, and then to ask yourself, what level of Bloom taxonomy is it serving? And you know that Bloom, for those who are not yet familiar with this, Bloom suggested this taxonomy in 1956 in order to enhance the process of thinking of the students and to move it to higher order thinking skills. Okay, so basically we make that decision about the task we want to have for the students and the level that it serves. Once we decide, for example, that it serves the level of analysis, we start to ask about the digital taxonomy now. What would this activity look like in digital taxonomy? So we know what it looks like when you are using paper and pencil and board in the classroom, but what would it look like when you are using the internet, because you are using or you are in distance learning? So you are in the level of analysis. So what will you be choosing and how will you be adapting the traditional one to be or to reflect analysis in the digital learning? And after that, you ask yourself, what application is out there that will facilitate the level of analysis? Okay, so what application fits Bloom's taxonomy analysis level that I can use in my classroom in order to achieve the goal that we had at the beginning? But you need to remember that all starts with defining the content and task and deciding what level it serves. And then you move on to asking about the application that would suit this level. Now, it is worth mentioning that, the two models, the SAMR and Bloom's taxonomy, are closely related. So when you are substituting and augmenting, when you are enhancing learning, you are actually only reaching the level of application. However, when you move up to modification and redefinition, it is when you are moving up actually in Bloom's taxonomy in the level of analysis, evaluating, and creating. So these are the questions that you need to have in mind. before you move to the design that you want to put in your classroom. So with learning theories, remember that the learning theories that we had here are only the ones that relate to technology integration, because this is what we're focusing on in this presentation. But there are also the learning theories that inform our teaching practices that we all need to be aware of. And then, of course, and they will decide on the learning outcomes and how we structure the experiences. From there, we move to the instructional design. So what kind of design do we have, should we have in our classroom to facilitate that kind of learning? And when you think of your instructional design, I want you also to think of the 4 Ps, okay? And the 4 Ps are the words that start with the letter P: projects, passion, play, and peers. So the instructional designs that we have for our students, are they involving projects? Are they facilitating work with peers? Are they really addressing learners' autonomy and learners' passion, enhancing their intrinsic motivation and willingness to learn? And are you having or integrating the element of fun? Of course, the element of fun should remain there. The play should remain there, but it should not be our first goal when we use the technology. This is the caveat that we're warning against. So let me move you now to some of the instructional designs that would facilitate this. So are you familiar with the concept of Makerspace? Okay, we need more answers. Okay, I see that the majority here say no. And for this, we'll watch the following video about the Makerspace and its relation to problem solving and growth mindset, and then we'll continue our discussion.
The best activities in classrooms develop a lot of skills at one time, both cognitive and social emotional. As we talk a lot about the complex thinking and problem solving that people need to be able to do in today's society, in order to do that, you need the capacity to self-regulate, to manage your time and your emotions. You need the capacity of executive functioning, to organize how you approach things, to be metacognitive and reflective about your work. These things are developed in certain kinds of work simultaneously.
Creative problem solving is a skill that we want our kids to have. And the Makerspace is the place in the classroom where we're cultivating that skill in our kids.
I'm supposed to make something, and it's like supposed to help people or like help fix a solution.
Alright, so let's go to your design.
She'll get your approval, so then you can start getting your materials and make it.
When you give kids autonomy and choice and really hands-on materials, you have them applying the learning in a way that helps them to gain deep understanding.
If you give children a project to undertake, a passion that they have that they want to find the answer to, they need to be able to organize themselves. They will be using critical thinking and problem solving. And as they undertake these tasks, they're building both the social and emotional foundation, and they're also building the cognitive abilities to demonstrate their learning.
It's almost second nature to them that you keep working on something.
to turn this a little because it was going the wrong way because I was going middle.
We send the message in everything we do that struggle and making mistakes are ways that you can learn. The Makerspace is a physical place and an approach to problem solving that really lends itself to that notion of practice being important. As you work harder on it and change it and improve it, it gets better.
Because of that, they will feel empowered with a growth mindset to continually get better in their learning.
It's times things apart, but we call it take apart, so we can take it apart.
When everything we do is building independence in kids, building their ability to be self-regulated, then you can release to time and interest areas where kids can go to the Makerspace and stay there as long as they'd like, because you've built that ability to be self-regulated while doing that autonomous work.
I'll hold it like that. No, I got it. This is like a lever.
We see children as little as 3 years old spending 30, 40 minutes working on a project, regulating themselves, because it's an environment that both teaches them how to do it and is positive and affirming.
Sorry, Dr. Jim, you're muted. Sorry.
Thank you for that, sorry. So we need to think about the space that we are creating for our students. Are we creating the maker space? And even when we're talking about distance learning, are we keeping that thing in mind, that concept in mind, that we are creating the space that would allow them to produce something, to collaborate, and at the same time to do this based on their own choice. So the design that we want to talk about today actually relates to the project-based learning and the project-based design. So remember the 4 Ps. We said we talked about project, playing, passion, and peers. So this is the design that we should from now on, I mean that has been actually substantiated in the literature. It has to be an integral part of our own design and of our own teaching. Okay, so project-based learning is basically and simply a design that would ask the students to produce something, to come up with a product in order to show you that they have learned something, okay, to show you what they can do and what they know. So how do they demonstrate the learning? By producing a product, a performance, okay? And this is what we call project-based learning. Now, what is unique about project-based learning, if we all really claim that we have it, is that it does not follow the traditional teaching approach. So look at the approach that we have here. When you are teaching traditionally, we start with identifying our learning outcomes. And then after we look at the outcomes, the learning outcomes, we start putting the material and writing the material that we want to teach the students. Or if we have ready textbooks, we use that. And then we think, what kind of assessment do we need to test the material that we put? And you put that assessment and you put the criteria for it. However, when you are using the project-based learning design, you have a backward design, even in your thinking of how you're preparing your activities for your classroom or your designs for your classroom. Sorry, not the activities, the design. So with the PBL design, you start by identifying your goal, the big goal, or the learning outcomes, and then you think of the performance. What kind of performance do I expect from my students that would really demonstrate to me what they can do and what they know? So the second step is not thinking of your learning material, it's thinking of the evidence that would really, that the students should give to you in order to demonstrate a true understanding of the knowledge that you have presented in your class. So you have the learning outcomes and you have the evidence that they have learned it. And how are you going to measure this evidence? Are you going to measure the product using the criteria, okay, and the rubric that you designed for them? And after that, what kind of material do I want to teach in my class, or should I teach in my classroom in order to help them achieve these learning outcomes and help them do this task that I asked for. So you can see, how places of the designs have shifted when you are shifting from traditional teaching into the performance-based learning. So you actually move to a backward design, where you start by identifying the desired results, the big ideas, and then you identify the task that you want to give to your students, okay? And the assessment task that you want to give to them. And finally, you plan the material accordingly in order to make sure that they understand what you've, that they are getting ready for the design that you asked for. Okay, please remember when you consider having the PBL in your classroom that the project-based learning or the performance assessment, as the other name that it has, should be longitudinal. So you should allow time for the performance to take place and for the project to take place. It should be authentic. It should relate to the students' real life experiences in order for them to have meaning. It should be open, so you should allow choices and autonomy, okay, for the students to choose how they approach the task and how they choose to present it. It should be non-biased, so you should take all your students into consideration. It should be constructivist. It allows them to construct the knowledge. It is student-oriented and it is process-oriented. There is a process of building this product. Okay, so these are some of the attributes of that. One of the places or the links that I like all my students to know about, and I like all the learners to know about, is the PBL Works. I advise you all to go to this link because, let's see if I can move this here, because this one, okay, and this is the link you have here. This one has ideas for projects that you can integrate in your class. So if you look at the projects and the resources, and if you look here, it has many ideas for projects that you integrate for different subjects. So they're divided here by subjects and the grade level, and they can give you many inspiring ideas for projects that you can integrate in your classes. So I highly recommend that you all go to this website and really investigate what potential it has for you there to use in your classroom. So going back to our presentation, I will give you an example from the website itself, from the PBL Works, about one of the projects that this teacher had with grade 2, I think grade 1 or grade 2. And we would like to think of all the ideas that we discussed so far and the level of engagement of the students based on what these students were doing.
For this project, you are going to design a home. You're going to plan a home. You're going to build a home. This project, the tiny house project, is where students are designing tiny houses. Remember, when you're going to build this, we have to think about who's living in the house. There was a boom in tiny homes, just the idea of living in one, just because in the city, the population is growing and there's more people, less room. And maybe a tiny house is more cost efficient, more green. Would you like to have your own room? Yeah. Would you like to have your own space? Yeah. Okay. The driving question was, how can we, as a design team, design a house for clients, taking into consideration budget and location and personal preferences? The entry event was Minecraft. So they used Minecraft to build just a house that they would build for their family.
This is inside the house. This is where, like, the sofa, and over here is where I sleep.
They're able to use their creativity. They're able to just be free and just to build without anybody giving them parameters. Back to our project and this driving question. What do we need to know to answer this question?
Like, say they have family that's gonna come live with them, they have to think about that. Like, have a guest room.
The Minecraft building sparked, like, how many rooms do we build? And so they came up with their need to knows. Any other need to knows you'd like to add?
You have to imagine how much it costs.
Well, we have to know like how many kids there are or how big the family is, and are those questions that you think you should ask the client? And they're like, yeah. And so we come back to the driving question, we came back to the need to knows, and we came back to their entry event just so that they can get some questions that are appropriate for their project to their clients.
What is the minimum square footage you want?
400 feet.
Do you want a second story?
Yes, second story would be good.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that'd be cool.
I think it's important for them to know that there's a real client because it gives the project more authenticity.
Would you like to have a garden outside your house?
Yes.
When they form a relationship with the client, then they start to care about what the client thinks.
This is the final product. This is what the construction documents look like. But not too different from that concept drawing, right? We have the bedrooms up here, master bedroom in the corner.
So I asked an expert to come and present to the students, and he was actually a structural engineer.
You can see elevations. Just kind of look at what kind of information is on there. How do you tell a wall is a wall? You can see you put two lines parallel to one another.
And we talked about making blueprints and what does that look like, or having a layout.
Oh, look, it even has plants right here. I love these.
These are called elevations.
I think they were really excited about seeing the blueprints because it was just real things that they can hold, they can touch, and they can see, and they know that engineers touched it and engineers made this, and this is what we're going to do. All right, we're gonna move into our next rotation. On this side, we have front row and RAS kids for listening to reading and answering comprehension questions. So as we plan the project, we think about the standards that we're going to be using. In this project, we're using opinion writing or reading of informational text, and we integrate that into like a daily rotation in English language arts. So this is an article from NASA, and it's called Tiny House Fun. If you have something you want to highlight, like you want to get back to, or a word that you really don't understand and you want to learn more about that, you can highlight some words. So on that day, I had a group and we were looking at informational reading. And then another group, they were listening to a book that had to do with houses. And then another group was working on vocabulary, and all the vocabulary is part of the project. And then another group was just doing their read to self, and that's just books that they're interested in, so they're practicing reading independently. Write your name at the top. For math rotations, we call it math with the teacher, math with technology, and math with the partner. The house size that your client wanted. And then I'm working with the group, and we're really looking at area and perimeter and the difference between area and perimeter. Okay, so can you tell me what the square units are here? Another activity that we did with math was the Cheez-Its math. When they looked at square footage, we said that each Cheez-Its was 1 square inch, and they used that kind of information to do square footage within a house. It was just kind of a connection for them. To help them refine their designs of their homes, students went through a feedback protocol.
I turned the bathtub from here to here because I know that you can't get to the toilet if it was like that. There's the bathroom with the shower. Yeah.
They were paired up with another group, and they presented their models, they presented their blueprints and their layout, and they talked about what was in the house and who their client was, just to get some feedback from their peers.
Our client is Miss Pena. Her age is 39. Her budget is $40,000.
Within the fishbowl protocol, what we did was, me and another teacher, we sat in front of a presenting group, and everyone else looked around us, just like a fishbowl where they're not to talk, they're not to say anything, they're just really listening and seeing the interaction between the presenter and the guest.
I like how you do go into the living room, but maybe push the bedroom in the back. And then that way she has more privacy. And
the purpose of looking at that interaction between the audience and the presenter is so you can think about questions, you can think about behavior within the meeting, and so they can use that as a model for when they go back to their groups.
This is the laundry area, and then here's the pantry to store all the clothes. Right here we have a little office.
We practice different ways to present. to their clients. We talk about eye contact, we talk about confidence, we talk about postures, we talk about volume of your voice.
Hello, my name is America. Hello, my name is Christopher. And the title of our project is Tiny Houses. Our driving question of this project is, given a budget, how can we as a design team plan a home for a family?
The last day of this journey is for them to really present their work to their clients. And they were so excited.
Did you have a hard time building the house?
Kind of, yeah. We had to redo some of the walls so that they were the exact measurement. This is the master bedroom. The middle is the kitchen. Here's a room.
They shared their blueprints, they shared their layout, they shared their budget, and they shared their opinion paragraphs that they wrote so that they can try to persuade their client to purchase their home.
Doctor, you're muted again. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you, Layal. As I mentioned, if you go back to this website, the PBL Works, you will find more inspiring videos of ideas like that about projects that you can integrate into learning. And as you can see, the projects had all the elements that we talked about. They had the backward design element, and they had they were longitudinal, they focused on the process, the learner, the autonomy, authenticity, etc. All the elements were there present in that project. So that was the first design that I wanted to talk to you about. And the second design for today is the use of gamification. So before I talk about gamification, I would like to know from you, how often do you use the gamification in your teaching? So is it sometimes or all the time, most of the time, rarely, or never? So how often do you use it in your classroom? Oh, so I find people who never use gamification. Okay. Most of you here until now mentioned sometimes, which is really good. All right. Well, whether, okay, let's give it some more time. We're having more people, but still, I mean, most of you are choosing sometimes for that. Some of you chose rarely and never. And I hope that today, when you finish that, you will make a decision about changing this part, because whether we focus on game-based learning or gamification, and they're a bit two different concepts, having the game element in our classroom is very important, because the element of fun is important. It's essential for learning. Okay. And it was part of the 4 Ps. Always remember: projects, passion, peers, and play. These 4 elements have to be present in all what you present to class. So just to look at gamification, which is a new concept in education that originated in 2008, it just says that teachers traditionally used games in their classes, but in the digital age, we shifted towards a new concept of gamification. And basically gamification is application of elements of games on non-game content. So for example, you give content to your student and you apply, for example, the scores. If you finish this amount of what you're learning, you get this score. If you reach this level, you get this score. Or the element of competition, or the element of the leaderboard, for example. You use this for a non-game content. So basically, what you want to focus on here is the extrinsic motivation of your student. You want really to give them a push to motivate them to learn further. And this is why you want to add this fun element to the content that you are presenting. Okay. So this is basically what gamification is. let's look at this short video about how this was gamified outside the classroom. And let's look at the motivation of the clients in this one. Now, by looking, I hope I'm not muted, right? Okay. By looking at, you can see how many of the people have made that decision not to use the electric escalator in order to enjoy the fun of the music while they are walking on the stairs. So think of the analogy that we want to have here. The stairs represent the teaching material in class. And the student, your students are making the choice to avoid the content that you are presenting by using the easy way, the electric escalator. By adding this element of fun to the content that you have in your class, you inspire and you really motivate more students to use the stairs, which is to use the content that you have here. So that's only to present evidence that adding the fun element to your class would really enhance the engagement or the motivation, even if it were the extrinsic motivation. Another interesting thing about this video is that each one of those users here used the stairs in a unique way. Some of them jumped on it. Some of them went between, the black notes and the white notes. Some of them just tried it carefully and cautiously. So this resembles the learners that we have in class and the way they're going to approach the technology that we choose for them. Okay, now the last design that I have for you today, we talked about the PBL, we talked about gamification, and the last design that we need to be aware of is the student response system design. And this is something like, this is a bit new to the practices of our classrooms. For example, if you look here to the right on the clickers, that was, in 2012, between 2012, 2016, that was like, it brought a revolution into the classroom because it really gave a stronger voice and it enabled more engagement to the students by using these devices and connecting them to the screen. And it only took a couple of years in order for that to be replaced by the mobile phones that the students have. So instead of looking at the mobiles as a means of distraction, now we're looking at the mobiles as means for enhancing their engagement. So many applications are out there now that are dependent on the student response system, SRS, or the class response system, the CRS. Some of these applications are like the one that we're using, the one we are using today, the AHA slides or the Mentimeter, which resembles it. There's also the Socrative, there is Kahoot, and there's the Clicker, which was, it's an old one, which is a bit expensive because, the place has to provide the devices. But there are many, many other applications that are dependent on the SRS. There are only waiting for us to make that decision to integrate them. And to give you only one example about like my own students who are teachers themselves, I personally started integrating when we moved to the online teaching. started integrating the AHA slide and teaching my my classes through the AHA slides. And many of my students who are teachers themselves were inspired, and they're telling me that they decided to shift their teaching into this platform. So, and they find that it has truly enhanced the level of engagement of their students. So that's something for all of us to consider. And for those who chose they never use technology in their classroom, I recommend that they start with simple applications like Kahoot. Kahoot is the very basic application that we need all to know about because it has the element of fun. These are mostly, by the way, used to as a kind of formative assessment. So they enable you every now and then to stop your teaching in order to pose a question at your students and to make sure that the students are following, are catching up, and they're, they know what you're talking about and they can respond to your students. So it's a form of formative assessment. Now, we finished the learning theories, we checked the designs that we want to have, the project-based learning, the gamification, and the SRS systems. Now, what applications would fit into these designs is the last question that we ask ourselves. So what applications are you familiar with? Now, I want you, because many of you said that they use applications in their classroom. So can you just type the name of applications that you use? Kahoot, Nearpod, yes, Nearpod is a very popular one. Okay, WordWall, ClassKick, Kahoot again, Padlet. Nearpod, Kahoot, Quizzes, Pentimeter. All right, I'm pretty confident that you're even more, informed about all the applications that are out there that will help teaching and learning, because many of you are using them in class. So yes, you have all these applications, and I think the list will go on. But again, after we finish this presentation, I am hoping that you will pause and reflect on what is informing your use of these applications. What benefit are these applications bringing to your class practice? Okay, are they only there to add element of fun and for you to sit back and relax, or they have an added value to what you're teaching? So the first one is the Kahoot application, and it's very easy, to go there and to access Kahoot. It's free. There's a free version. It enables you to gamify the learning and to create formative assessments for your classroom. It enables a review for the summative exams. So before the students have their, let's say, midterm or their final exam, you can have a Kahoot game to revise things. You can create warm-up activities just to get them into the theme that you have for the day. You can play Kahoot in Teams mode, and you can also, if you're subscribed to Kahoot, you can also upload your presentation the way I'm using AHA slide today, okay? If you are using the premium Kahoot, and you can integrate your questions throughout your presentation, which would be really a lot of fun. There's the Padlet, which I love myself because, the possibilities for using Padlet are endless. You can use it to brainstorm, you can use it as a question bank, to gather students' work, to display their work, to discuss things, to share assignments, to have their portfolio uploaded there as an exit ticket for classroom communication. The possibilities are endless for that one. There's also the Mentimeter and AHA slide that I talked about earlier. And of course, I am using AHA slide today, so that would give you a practical example. The last one that I have for you today is actually the one that I would like all of you to learn more about, which is the Edpuzzle. And the Edpuzzle is an application that would enable you to edit videos. So many of us integrate videos into our PowerPoints in class. But we wait until the very end, and this is what I noticed when I go and attend my students, practicum students classes. they wait until the very end to ask a question about, oh, what did you understand from this video? Okay, what did the speaker talk about in terms of this and this and that? And then students try to recall what was there in the video. But Edpuzzle is another application, fascinating free application that would enable you to integrate your question in the presentation that you have, in the video you're using, and to get the results from your students' answers, so you know who attempted to answer them or not. And this is an excellent tool also for flipped learning or flipped classroom designs, where you send the videos, even your own recorded videos, and you really integrate or embed the questions in the videos that you have. So let's watch this very short video about it.
Want to create amazing video lessons in minutes? Edpuzzle is your missing piece. With Edpuzzle, you can choose from the millions of videos available from YouTube, National Geographic, TED Talks, Khan Academy, and more. You can also reuse ready-to-go video lessons made by other teachers or upload your very own teaching video. Then, use Edpuzzle's video editor to create your perfect lesson. Embed your own questions to check your students' understanding, cut sections to show your students only the most important parts of the video, and even record voiceover so you can explain concepts in your own words. Once you've finished, you can assign it to your students in just one click and prevent skipping to make sure your students don't miss a thing. When you want to check in on your students' progress, use Edpuzzle's hassle-free analytics to get all the information you need. See who still needs to watch the video, what your students responded, and their total scores. So remember, with Edpuzzle's free platform, you can make any video your lesson.
Okay, so I hope that you will give it a try, okay, in order to integrate the videos more efficiently in your coming classrooms. Okay, with this, as I mentioned, the possibilities are endless with the applications that we can use in order to enhance the engagement of our students. But what we need to remain aware of is the choices that we make to have this technology in our classroom and what inform these choices. So coming to an end, with this presentation, I would like to ask the following question. What part of today's presentation did you like most and believe will influence your teaching practices? All right, Edpuzzle, I like, okay, good. Project-based learning, I'm really happy that you found this inspiring. That's a very, important part to learning that we all need to consider integrating into our own learning. Okay, Bloom's digital taxonomy, okay. The new application, project-based learning again, Edpuzzle, project-based learning and Edpuzzle. Models behind technology, thank you for that. Everything was amazing, thank you, that's so kind of you. And everything was amazing, use of digital technology, okay. Space maker, innovation in teaching, the funnel method, okay. The 4 Ps. Yeah, you found many of the ideas inspiring here. And with the applications, telling you that the possibilities are endless. And once it takes you only one time to try to access one of these applications and to put the effort, a serious effort, into integrating it into your own teaching, and then you would really bridge this gap. And you would find it very easy to designs, all right? So, okay. Now, to recap, the choices we make about technology integration for enhancing learners' engagement have to be informed by learning theories and instructional design to assure quality of what we present at schools. So that's the message, the final message I want you to leave this platform with. All our choices have to be informed. And of course, recap the engagement in traditional and hybrid education. And we talked about the funnel design. So with this, I'll bring the presentation to an end. I don't know if, I think some of you might have questions. Okay.
Questions in the Q&A, Doctor.
There are questions there, yeah? Let's check. Is it possible to have the levels of engagement at the same time. For example, when hybrid teaching, yes, of course, differentiation should remain an element of your own teaching, okay? You can always think of the activity at many levels, the same activity. Remember how we thought of integrating Bloom's taxonomy, digital taxonomy? We said that the very first question you have is, what task do I want my students to achieve and what content do I want to teach? And from there, I can design the differentiated activity and then decide what level it fits into the Bloom's pyramid. And after that, I take it to the digital pyramid and I say, what technology would enable me to do this activity at the first level, second level, and third level? I like what one of my students named them, the bronze, silver, and gold level. So she always sends her students to the bronze level. When they finish that, she says, you're ready for the gold, the silver, and when you finish, you should go and aim for the gold level. So differentiation should always remain at the heart of what we do. Remember that today the focus was on using technology in hybrid teaching. And I focused on this point. I said the theories that I included in my presentation related to technology integration. This does not by any means replace the theories that we have for teaching and learning, okay? Now, are all students will take same education through, though they poor and they've not the same thing to give? Yes, the issue of equity, and the answer is no, they won't, unfortunately. The issue of equity will remain a question out there. We do what we can do, and we are, as part of, I mean, this question is really big. It's really big. As part of being a global citizen now, we might have, or we might extend our responsibilities to offer our help to people in other areas that are more disadvantaged in a way that we would find helpful with the means that they have. But do we have equity in education? No, we don't, but we're trying to work towards that. I do agree. However, when we talk about the schools that we're teaching here, although they are not equal in the facilities that they are provided, this does not give the teachers, give us educators the excuse of not to integrate technology. Technology can really include everything. Everything is a technology, but we have to leave the, leave our imagination open for all the possibilities that are out there. Okay, and you will find answers. I'm sure you will. Oh, what technology can support project-based learning? Dr. Constantine, yes, please, Dr. Costa. Dr. Costa would like to support us with this one. Or you are the one who was, yeah, Nada asked this question, what technology can support project-based learning? And here, Layal, I have Dr. Constantine would like to answer this question.
I don't think Dr. Costa is with us anymore.
Okay, no worries. That's fine. That's fine. Probably. Okay. There again, the possibilities are endless for using technology for the project-based learning. What decides on the technology you need is your project itself. Remember, we said that you start with a big question, and then you decide on the task that you want your students to achieve, and then the criteria for assessing the task, and finally the material that you are designing for your class. And then when you reach this level, Nada, the material that you are designing for your students, okay, and how they're going to do the task, you can decide on the technology that they will be using, all right? So there's no one answer for this one. The possibilities are endless again. And here, Namitha, how can we use PBL in subject like English? Okay, Namitha, you would really benefit from the website that I put here, the PBL Works. And again, there are so many possibilities for creating role plays, for for things that students can act, for them to write essays. Okay, that could be their project, for them to come up with a design and defend it, for them to have a debate by the end of this month about a topic that you have introduced in class. So the forms, or for them to produce a brochure about something that, a topic that you integrated in your class, again, the ideas are numerous for projects that you can have for English. All you need to do is to become really an active searcher for that. Check the website, you will have many inspiring ideas for that. As I mentioned, thinking of English, because I am originally an English teacher myself. I used to have role plays, I used to have debates, I used to have brochures, I used to have essays, I used to have speeches, I used to have impromptu questions, not impromptu questions, that would be, I mean, towards the end of one class. But there are so many ideas that you can have for them for this one. Okay. يعني أعرض فكرة التدريس القائم على المشروع في ظل الكوفيد لأنه يظهر أن الفيديو ما قبل الكوفيد حتى نعرف التحديات والمعوقات لمثل هذا الأسلوب في التدريس. We tried here, yes, here the participant says that why don't you really offer ideas of what can be really used during COVID. You can, I mean, the only video that was offered or that was used here pre-COVID is the Makerspace. Okay, and I agree that Makerspace will have its own limitation when you are teaching in class. However, all the other videos, all the other ideas would really, I mean, include the teaching that is happening online now, and it would cover it. Okay. The spaces that you will need to create when you shift from the Makerspace in reality into the Makerspace in distance learning. And nowadays we have the hybrid learning, by the way. So we're going back to traditional learning as well, and we're having a mix of both. So nowadays we're having the blended learning. So you will definitely need the Makerspace. But let's assume that some schools are still 100% dependent on the online teaching. You can still with the virtual spaces using some applications that are virtual. Okay, so there are virtual, for example, labs that you can take your students to. There are virtual tours that the students can do. Designs that need them to work, I mean, with hands-on are still designs that need to be done in school, unless you can really have the students open teams, I mean, or open or connect in teams, in virtual teams, while they are working on the material from their own side, from their own space. So that's a way we can think about of a makerspace that they can have at home with tools that you have identified earlier on that you know that might be available for your students at home. And then you connect them in virtual rooms where they share these tools and talk about how they can use them, and they start using them together. I know it's difficult, but we are lucky, we're hopefully, and we're that we will be going soon to the blended learning where we will have part of teaching happening in class. Okay, in the PBL video of a tiny house, what was the period of time of the project and which subject? Okay, the subject, as you noticed, it was interdisciplinary, so it was it depended on different subjects. Usually project-based learning is interdisciplinary in approach. So you might need topics from math, as happened, I mean, here, she borrowed things from math and topics from English and topics from, you know, based on the soft skills. So this is what is so special and unique about project-based learning, who said the big question, the task that would show you that they can answer this big question, and then the teaching material design that would enable them to do that. And that's usually interdisciplinary. Okay, then if the period is more than 1 week, when are they going to use or cover other topics from curriculum planned yearly? Do they have a yearly plan where that project or such ones are included? That's again a good question and a big question. Some of the schools, I mean, your question relates to the 21st century learning and to the theme-based learning. Now, some of the schools do not depend only on the core subjects of learning of the 21st century that we are all familiar with, like Arabic, English, or the languages, English, math, science, math, etc. They depend on the theme-based learning, where they take a concept and they investigate it throughout like one semester. And this runs or 1 month, for example, and this runs in the whole school. And they're all focusing on this concept at different levels. The learning is happening. And the learning, I mean, we're trying to broaden our understanding of what learning means and what curriculum is, and how we define the learning that should happen to the learner at this stage. I think we all believe and we all agree after we've watched that video that a lot of learning, authentic learning, happened to all the learners at that, in that class. They've learned math, they've learned English, they've learned communication, they've learned so many skills. When I displayed this video in one of my classes, I had a student who did architecture and she was joining us in the teaching diploma. And she said, wow, I mean, we didn't even do that when we were at the university. So she was so impressed and she said, like, probably I will try to use that in my own class. So yeah, if you are using the theme-based learning, or if there's an agreement, if you have a PLC, professional learning community of teachers that who come together and try to decide to teach a concept throughout different subjects, this is something that they can teach. It would be better if the idea of project-based learning was presented in COVID-19, because it appears that the video is pre-COVID. We are going, and now we are actually post-COVID. So what I'm saying here is that we are going back to the hybrid learning. So what we are presenting here is still valid about the engagement of our students. And as I mentioned, engagement remains the same. If you get the concepts from that video about the big idea, the product, and how you're going to teach for that, you can adapt that to happen in your own classroom, okay? So we're thinking of ideas of how we can create this collaboration. Remember the project, peer, passion, and play. How can you have all these 4 elements in a project-based design in your distance learning when you have, for example, when you are teaching using teams? I have this and I use the breakout rooms. What I need to think about before I go into my classroom is the big idea, the big question that I'm going to inspire my students with, and then I will facilitate the learning that happens after that. We have all to agree that there will be limitations. Nothing would really resemble the physical touch of things, but many of the activities, if you think about them, many of the activities that were presented there could be done virtually. Many of the discussions that took place there in that video could be presented virtually in the classroom. Okay. Would you say that gamification is how a form of extrinsic motivation is somehow? Yes, I would say that. Psychologically mean. Reward and competition are present, and students, especially younger ones, don't think of it as an incentive. What do you think? Well, it is an incentive, especially with younger students. They like to get a reward, and they like, I mean, the behaviorist school in psychology is a strong school. We cannot deny that. And I know that we need to focus on intrinsic motivation. Some of the theories about gamification claim that, the articles about it claim that you start with gamification in order to grow the motivation in your learner to learn. And once they start to be engaged, because they are extrinsically motivation, they start to see value in the learning that is happening. And the hope is here, after they start to see the value, the intrinsic motivation would start to grow. So you move gradually from the extrinsic to the intrinsic. And that shows you your responsibility as an educator to find the content that is really intrinsically motivating and has meaning to the student, all right, in order to keep them engaged after the motivation of comes to an end. Sorry, but why not save Arabic translation? I'm sorry for that. I'm not the tech person. I don't know. I mean, there wasn't Arabic translation. And here, we're sorry that Costa is not with us anymore, Dr. Costa. So how can we apply the Makerspace in distance learning? I've seen that in some of my students who teach in KG that I visit, in their classes virtually. and how they were depending on the material that students have in their own, or they have at home. Okay, so they try to simplify the activities or to think of alternatives, of options that the students might have at home and how they can use this in order to make things and design things and to replace the designer space. Again, virtual spaces are also an option. So there are other applications like virtual labs that will enable you to take your students and to do an experiment, okay? And that would replace them being, in fact, physically in a lab, for example, in a science lab. So again, applications might, some technology applications might give answer. Project-based, okay. There are applications of virtual reality that will also enable you to do that. I mean, I wish Dr. Costa were here, still here with us for this one. Now, can animated video enhance students' problem-solving skills? It depends on the content of the video that you are using and how you're using it in class, okay? So I don't really have a specific question for that, but for, specific answer for this one. For problem-solving skills, the students have, I mean, if your students are having issues with that, you need to take things gradually. So if you are expecting them to solve a skill at level D, for example, and you find that they cannot reach this level, you have to segment it. You have to take it one step at a time. And every time they reach one level, you push the bar up, you push the caliber up of your class and you move them to the next level of difficulty. So if you feel that the problem solving is an issue in your class, you need to divide it into stages. Probably what you are presenting is very difficult by itself. And yes, animated video is one of the ways that would help, but it will not be the only solution. Is the reflection on every topic or one, that's something for, I think for the organizers. I think the reflection is on all the sessions. Right, Leah?
Yes, Dr. Steha has already shared a link to
yeah, the reflection will be for all the sessions. It will be released on 24th of October, and you will be able to access it. It's a multiple choice question, 15 questions that you need to answer, and the certificate will be released by after 4th of November.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Teha. Now, how can we use PBL with hybrid? Yes, with hybrid education. When we say hybrid, we are thinking of both, right? The face-to-face and the online. And with the face-to-face, I think we gave many ideas. But with the online, you can still think of performance that can be facilitated through online teaching and learning. So the thing, unfortunately, the only idea that comes to our mind when we think of PBL design is a product, a tangible product, okay? So we're thinking, where can we how can we have the students sitting in the same physical place to prepare or to come up with this design and this product? But this is not always the case, okay? Sometimes they can come up with an argument. And they can, you can easily find a platform that would facilitate their engagement and their collaboration. Like, for example, the platforms that you have on Google, okay? Google platforms by itself, like the Google Slides or the Google Docs, they will allow you to have for example, a document where all the students will come and edit each other's work, and they can come up with a product, a shared product that you ask for. The slides are the same. They can come up with a shared product if you are not using Teams, because Teams itself allow you to do that. So there are many possibilities. It depends on the project that you have, the question that you ask, And then you can go and do a little search about what application would enable me to have the collaboration of my students on this one. But project-based learning study is something that continue to be done in hybrid education for sure. We've used the project-based learning during COVID as well. Students were still asked to do projects. They met through teams and they came up with designs and they created their designs were virtual, by the way. Their designs were electronic themselves. So my students came up, for example, they created a blog about the learning that they had, about the project that they were asked to do. And then they presented to class. And with this, they learned how to, they learned a new skill. Now my students are teachers themselves, so they learned a new skill for that. So the product, as you can see, is an application by itself. So this is how we need to think. You cannot expect to have the same the same traditional designs, but introducing them in new shapes. This is not what it takes to transform your own teaching and learning. Okay. PPL is much related to STEAM, of course, yes. Okay, شكرا جاوبت على السؤال بالعربي. Okay. Right, thank you. دكتورش, so you want me to answer you in Arabic? Okay, I answered that. Okay, because you write part of the sentence. مرة بالعربي ومرة ترجمته. شكرا جزيلا. عفوا عليا. And relying on materials that students have at home promotes creativity of students. Think of a different way to do the same thing. Thank you so much, anonymous attendee. I like that. So you're supporting what we're saying here. You have to start thinking outside the box. The box that we had is the traditional learning design. So now we are outside it. We need to think outside it of the new affordances and what we have. Okay, this is the link for registration. And will yesterday and today's slides be shared? Yes. Okay. Dr. Fleha is answering this on my behalf. Okay, فعلا محاضرتك ممتعة ومفيدة. دمتي. شكرا عالية. Thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. And I think, Layal, that brings us to the end of our questions for now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reem, for the great and informative presentation. I hope everyone has enjoyed today's session like I did. Just allow me to remind everyone of a few things. First of all, Dr. Muhammad Fteha has already shared the link to the feedback survey. Thank you all for going to fill this in. It allows the team to improve the professional development program based on your feedback. On another note, the final reflection, which is required to get a certificate of completion, will be issued on October 24, and the deadline to submit it is on November 4. And afterwards, the certificates of completion or attendance will be shared with everyone. If you are having a problem with registering on the community portal, ADU community portal, please contact IT through the email. Also, Dr. Muhammad Fteha thankfully shared this in the chat box. On another note, also allow me to remind you that the last session, Module 5, Artificial Intelligence in Education, has been postponed from tomorrow, October 21, to Sunday, October 24, for the occasion of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, birthday, Al-Mawlid al-Nabawi Sharif. So see you all on Sunday, the 24th of October at 5 p.m. for Module 5, Artificial Intelligence in Education. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Layal.
Thank you, Layal. Thank you, Dr. Reem.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.